Do you remember the very first time you saw a music video on television? Maybe you were flipping through channels on a lazy Saturday afternoon, and suddenly, there it was. Bright neon colors, fast cuts, and a singer staring right through the screen like they knew you. It wasn't just music anymore. It was an experience. Back then, you might have been sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, maybe with a tab in hand, or just back from the mall. And then, boom, MTV changed everything. Welcome, friends, to another stroll down memory lane. Today, we're setting our time machine to the early 1980s, a decade of Walkmans, cassette tapes, and leg warmers. But most of all, we're remembering the birth of something revolutionary, MTV Music Television. It wasn't just a new channel, it was a cultural earthquake. For those of us who lived through it, MTV didn't just entertain us, it redefined what music looked like. We watched our favorite songs come alive, sometimes in weird and wonderful ways. It gave us Madonna before she was a queen, Michael Jackson before Thriller was legendary, and it turned the radio into a visual feast. In this episode, we'll rewind to those early days when the VJs became our companions and music videos became our windows into a brand new world. I'll share memories, invite you to share yours. And together, we'll relive the era when the beat came with a picture. Back in 1981, cable television was still a bit of a novelty in many homes. If you were lucky enough to have it, you might recall the fuzzy signal clearing up just in time to catch that rocket launch the very first moment MTV hit the airwaves. Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll, the voice said, and just like that, the Buggles' video Killed the Radio Star began playing. A strange, almost sci-fi song with a video to match futuristic screens, retro outfits, and a voice distorted by technology. It was the perfect metaphor for what was happening. Do you remember where you were when you first saw that video? Before MTV music came through speakers, your parents' hi-fi system, the car radio, or maybe that boom box you carried on your shoulder. But now, the music moved. You could see what it looked like to be a pop star, and that changed everything. Suddenly, the fashion, the dance moves, the attitude, it all mattered. Think about it. Before 1981, we only imagined what our favorite artists looked like while they sang. If you loved Fleetwood Mac or REO Speedwagon, chances are your image of them came from album covers or grainy midnight special performances. But MTV made sure you saw every sparkly glove, every spin, every pout. And the earliest videos, well, they weren't exactly polished. Many were low-budget, experimental, or just plain odd. Some bands didn't know what to do on camera. Others leaned into the weirdness, think Devo in their red energy domes, or the Cars with their surreal animation. But it was exciting. New. It was like watching music grow up in real time. And then came the VJs, the video jockeys, Martha Quinn, Alan Hunter, Nina Blackwood, Mark Goodman, J.J. Jackson. They were our guides, our cool older siblings who knew all the bands and seemed to live in that magical MTV studio. Their voices became familiar, and their style was oh so 80s big hair, leather jackets, bright colors, and that relaxed, chatty way of introducing the next big hit. Do you remember having a favorite VJ? Maybe you even imagined yourself in their shoes talking music all day surrounded by rock stars. Back then, if you wanted to see your favorite video, you had to wait. MTV was a 24/7 stream, but it wasn't on demand. You'd catch snippets of Billie Jean or Take On Me in passing, and if you missed it, you just had to hope it came on again. There was something special about that. It made the music feel earned, like spotting a rare butterfly. And the videos themselves, they became cultural events. When Michael Jackson's Thriller premiered in 1983, it wasn't just a video. It was a full-blown short film. Folks gathered around their TVs like it was the Super Bowl. So tell me, what was the first music video that made your jaw drop? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure other viewers will too. As MTV gained momentum in the early 80s, it didn't just play the hits, it made the hits. Some artists were made for the video age. Madonna, for instance, might have been a rising star on the club circuit, but it was MTV that turned her into a cultural phenomenon. Her 1984 video for Like a Virgin set in Venice with her rolling around in a wedding dress was unforgettable, provocative, daring, and utterly captivating. It wasn't just the song we talked about at work or at school. It was how she looked while singing it. MTV gave artists a stage that reached far beyond concert halls. Cyndi Lauper's bright orange hair and punky style and Girls Just Want to Have Fun made her a voice and a look for a generation of girls who wanted to be bold. Suddenly, every mall in America had at least one store selling fingerless gloves, jelly shoes, and neon tights. And who could forget Duran Duran? With their glamorous cinematic videos shot in Sri Lanka and Antigua, they weren't just a band, they were adventurers. The song Rio wasn't just a hit on the radio. It was a tropical daydream on screen. For young viewers, MTV was a passport. One moment, you were in a New York subway with Blondie. The next, flying across the Sahara with Toto in Africa. It brought the world to our living rooms, even if the colors were slightly off on our old RCA TVs. But it wasn't just about pop. MTV played a major role in breaking down musical boundaries. Heavy metal found a home in shows like Headbangers Ball, and new wave thrived with artists like Talking Heads and The Police. Even country got a moment with crossover artists like Dolly Parton. Yet early on, there was criticism too. Many pointed out MTV's initial lack of diversity. It wasn't until Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, after some pressure from CBS Records, that MTV began regularly showcasing black artists. Once they did, though, everything changed. Beat It, Thriller Bad. Each of these was more than a video. They were events, and Michael Jackson, with his moonwalk and cinematic vision, became the king not just of pop, but of the music video itself. Do you remember watching Thriller for the first time? Were you amazed, a little spooked? Maybe both. Let us know in the comments, where were you when you saw that red jacket and those dancing zombies? Let's talk style, because MTV didn't just change what we listened to. It changed how we looked. Back then, if you walked into a record store, or even just your local Woolworths, you could see the impact. There were racks of rubber bracelets like Madonna's leather jackets, like Billy Idol's, and enough Aquanet hairspray to fog up a football field. It wasn't about dressing like a celebrity anymore. It was about being one in your own way. Teens were dyeing their hair, layering their clothes, and copying moves they saw in videos. The fashion spread like wildfire. Even small-town kids who'd never set foot in New York or L.A. were suddenly wearing lace gloves, parachute pants, and Wayfarer sunglasses. Music videos made it possible. MTV was like a runway for the entire country, and let's not forget the dance moves. You had break dancers spinning on cardboard in city streets, inspired by videos like Herbie Hancock's Rocket and Run DMC. Kids practiced the moonwalk in their bedrooms, dreaming of being on solid gold. But MTV did more than just entertain. It connected people. Think about it. How many conversations started with, "Did you see that video last night?" In those days, you couldn't rewind or look it up on YouTube. You had to be there when it aired. It became a social event. Friends would gather for hours in front of the screen trading stories about their favorite bands. High schoolers recorded videos onto VHS tapes to rewatch with friends on weekends. Entire parties were themed around the top 20 video countdown. There was a warmth to it all, something communal, something real, and MTV was always evolving. Remember MTV Unplugged in the late 80s? Suddenly, all those flashy acts stripped things down to bare instruments and candlelight. It reminded us that behind all the lights and leather, the music still mattered. So much of who we became, how we expressed ourselves, how we connected with each other, was shaped by those moving pictures set to music. Let me ask you, what outfit or trend did you try to pull off back then? Were you more of a Madonna rebel or a Springsteen denim type? Did you have the glove, the perm, the pastel jacket? Share it below. I promise we won't judge. We all have those old Polaroids hidden in a shoebox somewhere. As the 80s rolled toward the 90s, both MTV and its viewers started to change. The channel that once ran music videos 24/7 began branching out. First came MTV News, with Kurt Loder, serious glasses on breaking stories about music, politics, and pop culture. Suddenly, MTV wasn't just a jukebox, it was a voice. Then came the reality shows. Remember Remote Control? It was quirky and loud, our first taste of what was coming, and before long, the real world hit in 1992, showing us that MTV was ready to grow up with us or maybe even race ahead. But let's go back to the late 80s for a moment, because those final years of the decade gave us a last burst of video brilliance. You had U2's Where the Streets Have No Name shot live on a rooftop in Los Angeles like the Beatles in reverse. You had Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation choreographed down to the last breath. And who could forget George Michael's Faith with that leather jacket, stubble, and guitar lane that made millions swoon? By 1989, MTV wasn't just shaping music anymore, it was shaping culture, fashion, even attitudes. It helped normalize diversity in artists and styles. It gave us political videos, storytelling videos, and even some that made us cry. But as we moved into the 90s and beyond, something slowly faded. Music videos didn't disappear, but they weren't front and center anymore. MTV's lineup shifted toward shows, competitions, and eventually reality dramas. And while that resonated with a new generation, many of us felt a little left behind. Still, it's hard to forget those golden years when we'd sit cross-legged on the shag carpet or flop onto the waterbed, crank up the volume, and just watch for an hour, for a whole afternoon. Because it wasn't just about watching music. It was about feeling connected to something big, something exciting. A whole generation experiencing the same rhythm, the same color, the same beat. Let me ask you this final question. What was your favorite MTV moment? Was it a particular video, a countdown show, that feeling of seeing your favorite artist finally hit number one? Leave your memory in the comments. Let's keep the spirit alive. So here we are looking back on a time when music got up off the radio. threw on a jacket with shoulder pads and stepped onto the TV screen. MTV in the 80s wasn't just entertainment, it was a spark, a mirror, a megaphone for a generation finding its voice in big hair, bigger dreams, and unforgettable soundtracks. Sure, times have changed. Music lives in our pockets now, and we can stream anything at any time. But there's something special about waiting for your favorite song to come on, about hearing those opening notes and seeing them light up the screen. Back then, we didn't just listen to music, we lived it. Thank you for coming along on this journey today. If this brought back some good memories, give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep taking these nostalgic trips together. And please share your favorite MTV memory in the comments. We read every one, and your stories help keep this community warm and alive. Until next time, keep dancing, keep remembering, and keep that music in your heart.